Venezuela wasn't always in crisis. Decades ago, it was one of the richest countries in Latin America, a place filled with hope, opportunities, and wealth. In fact, during the mid-20th century, people called it the Saudi Arabia of South America. Its capital, Caracas, had shiny skyscrapers, highways, malls, and a middle class that rivaled those in developed countries. Tourists came to enjoy beaches and mountains. The world admired Venezuela. So how did it become a country of hunger, blackouts, mass migration, and economic disaster? The story begins with oil. In the early 20th century, huge reserves of oil were discovered in Venezuela. By the 1920s, it became one of the top oil exporters in the world. Foreign companies rushed in. British, American, and Dutch corporations began drilling. Oil money poured in. By 1960, Venezuela co-founded OPEC, the global oil cartel, alongside countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran. This wealth transformed the country. Roads, hospitals, and schools were built. Education and healthcare became free. Poverty fell, the middle class expanded. In the 1970s, oil prices skyrocketed. Venezuela became incredibly rich almost overnight. People called it Venezuela Saudita. Corruption existed, but the oil revenue covered it up. The government didn't need to tax its citizens. Oil paid for everything. As long as oil prices were high, things looked perfect on the surface. But under the surface, a serious problem was growing. Venezuela fell into what's known as the resource curse, when a country becomes so rich from one natural resource that it neglects everything else. Farming declined, factories closed, innovation stopped. Venezuela stopped producing its own food, cars, clothes, everything was imported, paid for with oil money. This created a dangerous situation. The entire economy depended on oil. When oil prices dropped in the 1980s, the dream began to crack. Suddenly, the government couldn't pay for all its programs. The country borrowed heavily, debt piled up, inflation rose. Inequality became more visible. The poor felt the crisis first, but eventually, the middle class was hit too. The country had no safety net, no backup plan, just oil. And when oil money dried up, everything collapsed like a house of cards. In 1989, President Carlos Andrés Pérez raised fuel prices. Under pressure from the IMF overnight, the cost of living jumped. People took to the streets. The protests turned into riots. Over 300 people were killed in the violence. This event became known as El Caracazo, and it shook the nation to its core. Venezuelans felt betrayed. They had believed oil would protect them forever. But oil had become a trap. Corruption grew worse. Politicians were seen as thieves. Hope disappeared. And in the middle of this chaos, a young military officer named Hugo Chávez appeared. In 1992, Chavez led a failed coup. He was arrested, but became a symbol of rebellion. He promised change. He spoke directly to the poor, the forgotten, the angry. When he ran for president in 1998, people saw him as a savior. He won. Chavez introduced what he called 21st century socialism. He nationalized oil and other industries. He kicked out foreign companies. He gave speeches against capitalism and the US. But oil prices rose again in the early 2000s, and Chavez used that boom to launch massive social programs. Free food, free housing, free education, free healthcare. The poor loved him. His approval ratings soared. He built a powerful image, the man of the people. He gave speeches for hours, often singing or crying on live TV. He was more than a president, he was a movement. But behind the scenes, the economy was rotting. Businesses were shut down, foreign investors fled. The government printed more and more money to cover its spending. Instead of investing in the future, the states spent every dollar it had and borrowed more. By the time Chavez died of cancer in 2013, the damage was done, but worse was yet to come. Chavez's successor, Nicolás Maduro, lacked charisma, vision, and support. But he tried to copy Chavez's style. Unfortunately, he didn't have the oil money to do it. In 2014, oil prices crashed again. This time, the government had no savings, no foreign reserves. And still, it refused to change course. Instead of cutting spending or opening the economy, Maduro printed more money. Inflation exploded. Prices doubled in days, then in hours. In 2018, Venezuela entered hyperinflation. At one point, inflation reached over 1,000,000%. A loaf of bread cost a month's salary. People carried bags of cash just to buy rice. The currency became so worthless, it was used for crafts or burned for heat. Food vanished from shelves. Hospitals ran out of medicine, children starved. Families split apart as millions fled the country. Over 7 million people have left Venezuela since 2015, the largest refugee crisis in Latin American history. In response to the crisis and human rights abuses, the US, Canada, and the EU imposed sanctions on Maduro's regime. These targeted officials, oil exports, and financial transactions. The goal? Force democratic reforms, but the effect was further isolation. Venezuela couldn't access international markets, oil exports plummeted. At the same time, years of mismanagement destroyed the country's oil infrastructure. Refineries broke down, pipelines leaked, engineers fled. Incredibly, the country with the largest proven oil reserves in the world could barely produce oil. Electricity blackouts became daily. Water stopped flowing, crime soared, hospitals became death zones. And Maduro clung to power with support from the military, propaganda, and foreign allies like Russia, China, and Iran. Venezuela's fall wasn't caused by oil, it was caused by bad leadership, poor planning, corruption, and the illusion that oil money would last forever. It's a warning to every nation. Wealth is not a guarantee of success. Without strong institutions, transparency, and economic diversity, even the richest countries can fall. Oil made Venezuela rich, but it also made it lazy. Power was concentrated, dissent was silenced. Reality was ignored. And the people, the doctors, teachers, students, parents, paid the ultimate price. We must remember Venezuela not just as a tragedy, but as a lesson. A nation full of promise, brought to ruin by its own leaders and its own mistakes. Let's hope others don't repeat them. If you found this video helpful or eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story like this.